If you just murdered your best friend on an island, the dumbest thing you could do would be to call the Coast Guard. Anybody who sues Jax, Warren, or Morgan, they're gonna end up paying our attorney's fees. Guaranteed.
And then another following up on that is, why aren't we in jail yet? I mean, we're not geniuses.
New bombshell revelations from Nolan's friends emerged again today, and this time they hit even harder, honing in on the exact contradictions that first turned public sentiment against the group. Instead of helping their case, though, these details are backfiring badly.
The reason we turned down Coast Guard is, why would we call Coast Guard if Cito could pull us in?
So crazy to think that, why would we call Cito if we have a dead body on the boat? I mean, why would we call the Coast Guard? You know, why would we do the things we did if we know we killed?
So what's your take on these claims? And what if I told you that witnesses have stepped forward who saw Nolan and may have seen both what actually killed him and who was responsible?
Another report came to me of someone saying that they saw Nolan with a girl, and they believed that they saw Nolan and this girl struggling in the water, not necessarily drowning, but struggling. Like it was obvious enough that the person was concerned when they saw Nolan in the water.
Could these fresh bombshell revelations finally crack this case wide open? Who really saw Nolan, and what did they truly witness? Was this nothing more than a tragic accident after all? We're unpacking it all today. Unlike the interview from the day before, which centered mainly on the threats the friend group had been receiving, this newest sit-down with Brandon Tatum was much more blunt, confronting head-on the odd details that made this group suspects to begin with. First up, why they didn't notify the Coast Guard immediately.
I can go ahead and say that, as you posted that clip of all of us on the boat, you know, as it's rolling, not rolling, but right there sitting in the water, Wyatt's on the phone with Cito in that clip. I mean, he's on the phone. Wouldn't you think that you would have seen Nolan on the bottom of on the floor or something, or scrambling around, or everybody in a small space on the boat looking at him or something? I mean, it's just so crazy to think that, why would we call Cito if we have a dead body on the boat? I mean, why would we call the Coast Guard? You know, why would we do the things we did if we know we killed somebody? And then another following up on that is, why aren't we in jail yet? I mean, we're not geniuses. There's no way we could have done a murder. I mean, there's no way we could have covered it up, especially out there with that many people.
Throughout the interviews, the young men on board the Triton gave a consistent account of the Cito call. Per their story, they contacted Cito believing the company could simply tow the boat back to shore. When the Cito dispatcher asked whether they also wanted the Coast Guard notified, they declined, saying Cito could handle everything alone and tow them in. They maintain that they later repaired the boat themselves and piloted it into Fort Bayou under its own power, with no tow needed. Video the group made public appears to support this. Wyatt is shown talking to Cito on the phone, while the others sit around calmly, nothing in their demeanor suggesting fear or urgency.
A clip of the boat when Wyatt was on the phone with Cito, and it is boldly clear that Nolan was not on the boat with us. You can literally almost see down to the deck. And as you can see in that picture, everybody is completely casual while Wyatt's on the phone with Cito. Yeah, we were scrambling around trying to get the boat fixed, but the guys were, in the video, you can see me, I'm sitting on the bow. If there was someone dying on the boat, why would everybody just be sitting there waiting to either get towed in, or in the first place, like Jack said, why would Wyatt call Cito? It's crazy. The reason we turned down Coast Guard is, why would we call Coast Guard if Cito could pull us in? But we fixed the boat and we ran into Fort Bayou, and that's it. The Cito call was completely enhanced, and these people just want to believe what they want to hear. And that's exactly what they're doing.
The friend group and their lawyer kept circling back to a single argument. If these guys had actually harmed Nolan or were covering something up, reaching out to any official agency, especially a federal one like the Coast Guard, would have been the worst possible decision. Their attorney characterized the choice to call CETO instead of the Coast Guard as textbook innocent behavior, arguing there's no other logical interpretation, but Dr. Umar offered a contradicting take. In a separate interview, he explained that after reviewing that same call, the explanation simply doesn't match how people act when genuinely fighting to survive. On the recording, Wyatt, the one on the line, initially states the water depth as 31 feet, then walks it back. Dr. Umar pointed to that hesitation as a sign someone wasn't actually certain what he was seeing, not someone giving an accurate measurement. And if the boat truly was sinking in 31 feet of water, he added, refusing Coast Guard assistance makes little sense. The Coast Guard has far greater resources. If you think this CETO call doesn't add up either, drop a comment with the timestamp that convinced you. And hit subscribe, because we're breaking down every piece of evidence in this case as it develops.
He calls the operator on CETO. The operator says, how can I help you? And I'm paraphrasing. He says, our boat is sinking and we need a tow. She says, how much water are you in? He says, we're in 17 feet of water. No. We in 31 feet of water. Art, there's a big difference between 17 and 31. There's a big difference between 17 and 31. Why don't you know if you are in roughly 17 feet of water? And why don't you know if you are in roughly 31 feet of water? You are on the boat all the time. This is what they do, Art. They boat all the time. They go to Horn Island all the time. Why don't you know if you're in 17 foot of water or 31 foot of water? 31 foot of water. But Art, it gets better than this, Art. It gets better. The CETO operator, Art, says, do you want me to call the Coast Guard? Do you want me to call the Coast Guard? Guess what he said? We don't need the Coast Guard. Art, if your boat is sinking, do you care who comes to rescue you? If your boat is sinking, if I'm sinking in 31 feet of water, you could call the Coast Guard, you could call the aliens, you could call the Snow Bunny boat, you could call whoever you want to call if my boat is sinking. He told the operator, we don't need the Coast Guard. Who does that, Art? Who says we don't need the Coast Guard if we sinking? So she says, okay. And according to the coach, he spoke to Nolan between 2:30 and 3:30. So Javon didn't see him after 3:40. The coach spoke to him sometime between 2:30 and 3:30. And Katie said her conversation with Nolan was between 3 and 4:30. So you know what that means, Art? We can pretty much conclude that Nolan was likely to have been unalived, Art, sometime within the hour of 3:30 to 4:30. I'm going to insinuate that Nolan's life was taken because I do not believe he accidentally drowned.
Dr. Umar's interpretation was that the call felt less like a genuine mechanical distress situation and more like a constructed alibi. The timing fits suspiciously well, too. Landing around 4 o'clock, squarely inside the window he identifies for Nolan Wells' death, roughly between 3:30 and 4:30. Viewed this way, the call conveniently gave the group a ready-made explanation. They were tied up dealing with a broken boat, so they couldn't have been involved in anything else. Here's the sequence of events. The CETO call was placed from the Triton at 4 o'clock. The caller reported the boat taking on water and needing a tow. The dispatcher repeatedly asked how many people were aboard. The response stayed vague, something like, about 7. Never a definite number. When offered the option to bring in the Coast Guard, the caller turned it down, insisting CETO could manage it alone. Then came a set of questions some analysts later flagged as odd for a routine tow request, the dispatcher asking whether anyone on board was breathing and whether everyone was still alive.
Everybody on the boat is under 21. Art, she said, that was not my question. Art, she begged him to tell her how many people are on the boat. She said, that's not my question. How many people are on the boat? She said, is anybody breathing on the boat? He said, a lot of people breathing on the boat. She said, is there anybody living on the boat? He said, yes, people are alive on the boat. Art, I would like to investigate her. She didn't do no crime. I want to know what made that operator say, is anybody breathing on the boat? What made her say, is anybody alive on the boat, Art? What did she hear in the background? What did that operator hear in the background to make her ask him, is anybody breathing on the boat? That don't sound like a regular question. And then she said, is anybody living on the boat? It's almost like she could feel something was going on. I would love to know if those were standard questions, Art. I would love to know if those were standard questions or if she had a hunch that something fishy was going on. Now check this out, Art. She asked him a third or fourth time. He would not answer the question, Art. He would not answer the question. How many people are on the boat? Guess what he said, Art? Like 7. Like 7. Art, the boat only holds 8. They went out there that morning with 8. 7 Caucasians and Nolan. 7 Caucasians and Nolan. Art, they left with 7, right? When she said how many people on the boat, Art, why did he say like 7? Why didn't he say 7? It's only 7 people. Why couldn't he say 7? Why did he say like 7? You know why he said like 7, Art? Because he didn't know if Nolan was still alive or not. He didn't know if Nolan was still alive or not.
After the call, the group claims they got the boat running again on their own and steered it into Fort Bayou. Neither a sea tow vessel nor a Coast Guard cutter ever arrived to tow them, despite the emergency the call described. And when you go searching for independent confirmation of how severe the damage really was, there's simply none to be found. No photos or close-up footage of flooding or a failed engine, no inspection report, no official sea tow log entry, nothing from a mechanic verifying the boat's condition matched their account. All that exists is their own version of events and that short clip of the group sitting calmly while Wyatt is on the phone, footage showing no rising water, no dead engine, nothing that resembles an actual emergency. Dr. Umar was unequivocal here. In his assessment, nothing was actually wrong with the boat, and the call was simply a cover story. The fact that the boat was returned to its owner instead of being preserved as potential evidence further strengthens the argument that no real technical proof of damage was ever gathered. Then there's the passenger count. When repeatedly asked how many people were aboard, the answer never moved past like 7, never a firm, verified figure. Dr. Umar's interpretation, if the number really was 7, there'd be no reason to waver. He reads that phrasing as uncertainty, someone unsure whether Nolan was still alive to be included in the count. And those questions from the dispatcher about breathing, about whether anyone aboard was alive, that's not standard language for a routine tow request, which is part of why some analysts, Dr. Umar among them, suspect the operator may have picked up on something unusual happening in the background. Their account continues. They repaired it themselves and returned under their own power. But the time between the 4 o'clock call and their arrival at Fort Bayou was brief, arguably too brief to fit the emergency being described. Water 17 to 31 feet deep, a boat actively taking on water. If conditions were genuinely as severe as the call suggested, you'd expect outside assistance would have been necessary, and a self-repair would logically have taken much longer than it apparently did. That leads to the next red flag, how the sea tow call itself came to be canceled. Per accounts now circulating, Jerry, Wyatt's grandfather and the Triton's registered owner, reached out to Captain Seth at the local sea tow company directly, shortly after the tow had originally been requested.
All right, yeah, I just actually got off the phone with his grandpa, who I'm guessing is the owner of the boat, and he said that they, yeah, Jerry, yeah, he said,
Okay.
I just hung up with him. He said that they don't need any help right now, but if something changes, he'll call me back. So I'm guessing that they may have figured it out, because that's what he said. So they're in a panic and their boat won't crank.
Yeah, they're in a panic. He's saying the bilge is not keeping up. I asked for Coast Guard. He said no, but he's just really upset on the back end. And, I get it. It's a kid. He just doesn't understand.
Oh, okay. Do you still have him on the line?
Yes, I still have him on the line. And again, I couldn't find, he couldn't give me anything regarding his grandfather's, membership, so it's just under Jerry fee for service.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just talked to, if you want to, we're so tied up right now. We can't really do any non-member jobs right now.
Per those accounts, Jerry instructed them to stand down, telling them the family would take care of it themselves and that the service was no longer needed. Cito had already received the initial dispatch to head toward the scene, so this cancellation prevented an outside independent party from arriving promptly. Cito's standard procedure involves real-time logbook entries and formal reports that can be forwarded to the Coast Guard or other maritime authorities, so shutting that down also eliminated that documented trail. Public discussion has increasingly focused on the window this created, raising questions about whether it allowed time for physical evidence to be altered, for accounts to be synced up, or for details about who was actually piloting the Triton to shift. To some observers, including members of Nolan's family, having an adult intervene to sever ties with outside rescuers instead of mobilizing every available resource to locate Nolan comes across less as urgency to save him and more as an attempt to legally protect Wyatt. That's one of the elements fueling the broader cover-up theories. Attention then turned to cleaned up, manually transcribed versions of the Cito audio circulating online. Some of these enhanced versions claim to capture background speech suggesting Nolan was still aboard the boat, transcripts alleging his name was called out multiple times. Warren, Jax, Morgan, and their attorney categorically denied all of it.
The Cito call was completely enhanced, and these people just want to believe what they want to hear. And that's exactly what they're doing. So it's just crazy to me that people have tried to twist this and twist the audio. When we came out with the first interview, it debunked half these lies, and now you don't hear about any of it. You don't hear about the pool party because it was on June 27th. You don't hear about anything else that was mentioned. Thousands of lies, and now, the audio comes back, and all of a sudden we can hear Nolan yelling in the background, screaming, we're screaming about how he's dead. That's just a complete lie, and it's another lie to push this narrative that people don't want to turn down.
First, I would say that, it's proven in evidence that they're all lies. I think that most of these people are just going to, I say most of these people, a lot of these people that have posted stuff out there, they've just been lies backed by no evidence. And if I had one thing to say to them, I'd say do your research before you go out saying something that's not true, that could hurt someone. Just do your research. It's easy. All you have to do is just scroll like they do all day long and find the evidence that's right in front of their face. And it'll prove its own facts.
I could say I would want to add on to that, do the proper research. Sort through all the lies. And a lot of these stuff, you can just tell straight off the bat it's lies. And for one, it's defaming us, and for two, it makes you look like a dummy. You're just saying stuff, just pulling it out of who knows where, and you just look like an idiot on your phone making this TikTok or whatever. Do your research, man. If you can't simply do that, don't get on your phone and start making a video.
They pushed back forcefully against the enhanced recordings, describing them as the result of manual editing rather than any automated or independently verified forensic process, and therefore unreliable. They flatly denied that Nolan's voice, or any discussion of a death, could be heard anywhere in the background of the original call. Their attorney, Ed, went even further, calling the production and distribution of those manually created transcripts dishonest, potentially rising to the level of defamation, and stated he would pursue legal action against anyone knowingly spreading the false material. Still with us? If you're just joining, make sure you're subscribed. New witness claims are coming up next, and this is where the story takes another turn.
All right, but that's not the end of it. I'll say this again. If you lied, you won't be able to hide. If you lied, you won't be able to hide. And you're going to be held accountable. And if you lied about these fine young men, these good Ocean Springs people, you're going to be held accountable. You're going to be sued. I tell you, there are going to be lawsuits because we have already identified some of the worst offenders. And it may have felt good for them in the moment, instant gratification, sugar high. They got their sugar high, but long after that sugar high wears off, they're going to find themselves in court, and it's going to be excruciatingly painful.
Do you think that the other side, because I've seen through social media that there's a preparation of lawsuits against the boys. Is there merit, according to your knowledge in this space, is there merit to pursuing lawsuits against them?
I am so glad you asked that question because I can answer that question definitively and unequivocally. Anybody who sues Jax, Warren, or Morgan, they're going to end up paying our attorney's fees. Guaranteed. Any lawsuit, and I'm going to warn anyone right now, anybody who is thinking for 1 second about suing these fine young men, these good Ocean Springs people, you're going to pay their attorney's fees. You're going to lose. You're going to get annihilated. You're going to get crushed. You have nothing. And here's the beauty of it. We know you have nothing because we actually have the evidence. We know what happened.
New witness accounts have also entered the picture. On Nancy Grace's Crime Stories, the hosts raised a so-called mystery altercation, something making the rounds on social media as having occurred around 5 p.m., roughly 30 minutes after the Triton reportedly departed Horn Island. According to these posts, a group was seen nearly getting into a physical fight, and a Bertram boat was seen speeding off shortly afterward. One private message being referenced claims someone witnessed an argument involving Nolan and warned the other person they'd spend the rest of their life in prison. The panel highlighted the timing as noteworthy. If that altercation genuinely took place at 5 p.m., that's after the Triton had already left, meaning whoever Nolan was allegedly arguing with couldn't have been on that boat and would need to be examined independently. There's also the claim from the group's attorney, Ed, that two respected longtime Ocean Springs residents saw Nolan alive and well around 5:50 p.m., a full 90 minutes after the Triton allegedly departed. Ed vouched for these two as credible, stated they knew Nolan personally, and claimed there's additional evidence that could support their account. Separately, a witness interviewed on Officer Tatum's show described seeing Nolan and a young woman struggling in the water, but the panel was visibly doubtful of that account, noting that anyone who genuinely witnessed two people struggling in the water would likely try to intervene or report it immediately, rather than simply watching and leaving. Nancy Grace made the larger point. If solid evidence really does place Nolan on the island after 4:30, then the entire investigation needs to expand beyond just the individuals who were on the Triton. But both of these later sighting claims remain unverified. No names, no confirmation these individuals ever reported anything to police, no location specifics, nothing beyond hearsay. Notably, none of this emerged earlier, back when the friend group was receiving death threats and facing intense public backlash, which has led some, including Dr. Umar, to question whether the timing of these claims is more about legal strategy than truth. On the forensic front, experts have debated whether decomposition could erase hand abrasions while occipital, back of head, reddening remains visible. The theory being that scrapes and bruising break down differently during decomposition, which could explain why one appears in findings and the other doesn't. Officials, meanwhile, have remained cautious, understandable, given that roughly 30 young people were distributed across 3 boats that day, and any premature conclusion about cause of death carries significant legal risk, especially with race already woven into the public conversation. That silence from investigators has created a vacuum, and into it has poured every conceivable theory: accidental drowning, something that occurred on the boat, something that happened on the island after the Triton departed. With the complete autopsy findings, particularly any definitive answer on that occipital reddening, still not fully released, the questions about trauma and about how transparent this investigation truly is aren't fading anytime soon. Throughout all of this, the friends and their attorney have remained firm. Ed's stance hasn't wavered. 0% chance Warren, Jax, or Morgan did anything wrong. Completely, entirely, unconditionally innocent.